Hi, I'm your host, Marlo Lemon, and you're listening to Wild Voice, the podcast where I take this voice of mine and share my wild journey with you. Being widowed at 34 with a 15-month-old, most would see as life ending. And instead, I alchemized it and put life back together, and it became more beautiful and fulfilling than I could have ever imagined. Through this life shift of mine, I realized who I am and what I'm here to do. I'm an intuitive energy healer, and sharing how I view the world is how I help you upgrade your life and alchemize your journey into magic. From day one, I wanted to share my journey, call it intuition, but I knew it was going to do more good out in the world than keeping it to myself. So when I say I've mastered life, that doesn't mean I'm perfect or that life is. I mean, I've mastered the concept of life, and I want to share that with you. Okay, so I figured it was time for a life update episode. You guys love those. And when I did a poll on Instagram about upcoming episode topics, there were two things made obvious: more Nash episodes and juicy deets on my love life, boyfriend / behind the scenes of this new life we're living over here in this little beach town of ours. I am still in awe of divine timing and how things just come together in the time they are meant to. So March has been a pretty heavy month over the last 5 years. The last couple of years being the lightest, but still very heavy in reflection moments. And this year, we get to make new memories and have March take on a breath of life that hasn't been there, actually, maybe ever. Well, you ask and you shall receive. So our life update, we've moved. You might remember on the Nash episode, he talked about having a small house and coming to the realization that for us, that was just a stage of life we were in, a transition, a cocoon stage, I like to call it, a lot of inward energy and trying something new. It was our first take at spreading our wings, making the jump, and trusting we'd fly. It's been a little over a year since our move to this unique little beach town in Oregon. And I've become pretty clear, which means so has Nash, that we are always exactly where we're meant to be. Even if it feels clumsy or hard or confusing. I knew a few years ago I wanted to be by the beach. And as you've heard in previous episodes, the ocean has a place in my heart and brings a grounding to my soul. Just looking at it, I don't even have to be in it. I instantly feel like I can breathe. And I wasn't sure which ocean we were going to be by, but I just knew that the ocean is where we would end up. When I would get visuals of our future, I would see big open windows, flowy sheer curtains, and the ocean. Then COVID happened, and it slowed my roll a bit, and I was grateful to still live close to my family. But that draw never left. It just was paused because I was ready to jump back then. And the universe has a way of slowing us down if we're a little ahead of ourselves. So fast forward a handful of months during that first COVID year, Halloween to be exact, dressed up as matching skeletons with Nash and a full moon in the sky, I had a conversation with a tall drink of water that has been by my side ever since. The boyfriend. We'll call him boyfriend for now until he gives in to me having him on the podcast. We talked that night off and on, and to this day, I can take myself back to how it felt in that moment. He felt grounded. I felt protected by him. I felt like he could handle my story, like he could hold space for it. I just felt it in his presence. And I didn't even know him. We knew of each other, but literally just that. Never even thought twice until this moment. Looking back, there were so many moments we were in the same place at the same time, but almost didn't even see each other because it just wasn't time. We both had our own work to do on ourselves and journeys to take before we were ready for what we had in store together. And not to mention, earlier that week, I told myself I was so sick of dating and online dating that I turned it all off and just said, fuck it. I just planned to be single for now. And then there he was. So remember when I told you back in one of those beginning episodes, I mentioned I would go on dates and I just knew the ending of the movie before it even started. I could tell instantly when I would talk to someone on the phone just by their voice, or even setting eyes on them for the first time. And it wasn't so much about looks, it was just a feeling I would get. I could tell they weren't my match. And at this stage of life, if we weren't matching, it's that ending of the movie I could already see. And it actually was a little frustrating because I felt like I just want to have fun. I just want to get to know people. I just want to be able to build some momentum. And it was like I was stopped in my tracks before anything would even start because I would get these intuitive hits. I would get these feelings that I already knew this wasn't the person, not even the person to just spend time with or grow with. It was almost like my soul was like, we're not wasting any time with things that aren't in alignment with us. So it was stopping me in my tracks before things would even start. So that full moon, Halloween night, that tall drink of water and I exchanged phone numbers. And I heard from him right away. I got a text that night. There were no games, no who should call who or how long to wait to respond. It just flowed. And the first time we talked on the phone, his voice. It's like I was answering the phone with one eye closed and the phone pulled away from my ear as to like brace myself for that feeling that I knew the ending of the movie before it even started. And then I heard it. OMG. The butterflies and almost the shock that I didn't get that wah wah feeling. It was quite the opposite. So the show was on and I was excited for once. Learning my lesson from previous dates, I wanted him to get to know me without the story being what I led with. I'm more than my story, but it is a big part of me. I think I waited until our second date. And I slept with him on our first. So just know there are no fucking rules. If it feels right to your soul and it's genuinely what you want, it always works out in your favor. So let go of what you think that should look like and just go with what it does. The tall drink of water and I texted and talked every day and would see each other about every week or two. He lived about 2 hours from me in a small little beach town I'd never heard of, but he described it as paradise. He still does to this day. So I would go to him and he'd come to visit me, and it was all really natural. The long distance worked well for our schedules and our stages of life and us learning and leaning into this relationship idea together. Nash met him right away because it just happened that way, and it was more clumsy to try and hide him. I also wanted Nash to know it's okay to date people and try things out and see where it goes. If we weren't exactly sure, then that's okay. If it feels right to our heart, I wanted to show him an example of just going for it. Being long distance, when we would visit and stay over, obviously Nash was a part of my routine. So the sooner everyone could just be transparent, but the better this was going to be for all of us. Regardless of where I saw this going, that was how I wanted to approach it. And my parents were and still are amazing babysitters. So we had our fair share of solo time, but he really got to see my life and how I operated at face value. I was in that no fucks given stage of life. Here I am, take it or leave it. Spoiler alert, he took it and he never flinched. Now he edits my podcast episodes because he is a magic maker himself, a cinematographer and post-production editor, and just an all-around creative, entrepreneurial human. I'm sure this whole episode he's cringing because he likes to be behind the cameras, not in front of them or the topic of conversation. Hi, babe. The things that stood out to me not only are attraction and draw for one another, and that is something I'd never experienced before. It's like that eek feeling and butterflies when I see him. The conversations and the things we would talk about are so fulfilling and exciting, and that's what really meant so much to me, and still does. The depth and the way we view life, and the first time I came over, he was saging his place. I was like, did I create this guy on paper? Par and I actually joked about it. I would, of course, fill her in on details, and we would just laugh because literally it's like I manifested him. And I think I did in a way. I was like, how is this happening? And he just got me and let me be me. The first few months were pure magic. All of it's magic, but that honeymoon magic on crack. Then the work started. And what do I mean by work? Well, I've talked about soul complements before and their purpose in our life. And I've mentioned relationships are my thing. We all have a thing, an area of life that is a huge value of ours and kind of our thing to master in this lifetime. There are a handful. Some people, it's vocation, others, it's spiritual, some are physical and mental. Mine is relationships. So my biggest lessons come in that form. Around the time we seem to naturally fall into boyfriend and girlfriend, the lessons upleveled. The honeymoon stage is also something I've talked about before. I guess all past episodes are leading us here. The honeymoon stage is not something that is just for a couple of months, then vanishes. It's actually our gauge of what a relationship can be and then some. We get a taste of it, kind of like a little reward before the work. So we know actually what we're working towards. And this relationship has pushed and pulled and stretched my abilities in ways that would have never been possible without the boyfriend. I had to live it to start to integrate all the things I spent the few years prior learning, healing, and accessing. I will tell you, it was really hard, but it was due to the things that I was working through. You know, those memes of someone going through a spiritual awakening and it's like a roller coaster or a ride on the teacups at Disneyland, like moments of bliss mixed with chaos and fear and pain and happiness, and just glad you made it out the other side. And when you do, you never have a moment of regretting it. But I had to break so many limiting beliefs, and I had to use my tools like reflections and triggers and what would come up and how I would take responsibility for my own feelings and experiences I wanted to create. I had to take that responsibility. But that took a lot of work to break through a lot of that old shit that was sitting there, even with all the tools that I had. It was like I was actually putting them to work now. And the work was solid. I was always taking something from it and always coming out the other side, even though sometimes I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. In those moments, I also got to see sides of the boyfriend that were high values of mine in those moments. So even in the clumsy spots or the pain points, he never gave up. So I got moments of seeing that and getting to honor and respect those parts of him and those things that are so important to me. He also showed up and he never withheld how he felt about me, no matter what was going on. And relationships can either give you the crazies or make us feel settled and at peace. I know we've all had experiences with that, a relationship that just makes us feel like we're always reaching, like we're always trying to figure something out, like we just can't put our finger on something. Like it just makes us feel uneasy. And he has always made me feel settled. I had moments of not feeling settled, but they were things I needed to work through. But he was there the whole time. I explained him to my dad a week or so ago as a fighter, and he doesn't give up. He figures things out, and he has the biggest heart under all that toughness. And I've learned a lot about myself through this relationship, and even more so on how to understand others, how to read people even better, how to allow everyone to get what they want, and how to be the partner I want someone to be to me. Do I want someone who is easy to talk to, thoughtful, expresses love both physically and with their words? Then I need to be that person as well. How much I've learned by working on myself, it actually balances out the relationship and allows the other person in to complement that soul of mine. So I could go on and on as for the specific lessons I've learned and taken through this relationship. If you guys want to know some of those lessons, let me know and I will share them here. But for sake of getting to that current life update, let's continue. So months went on and things started to get clumsy and the long distance started to get tough. It started to feel like I was taking extra effort to just continue functioning that way. The type of effort that felt like, you know, when we're making traction but standing still. And the best way I can describe it is the tough spots. You can tell the difference when you are just spinning your wheels or if you're actually breaking through to something to get to the other side. Close to that 1 year mark, conversations of Nash and I moving that direction got brought up. And it was a very light conversation and almost a little scary at the same time and uncomfortable. I wanted to make sure I wasn't just moving for the relationship. That was too much pressure to put on it. I needed to see Nash and I there regardless. So I started seeing life through that lens and even opening the options up to California. I didn't want to move away that far. I also needed to exhaust that avenue to make sure that wasn't it. Like I said, relationships are my thing. And when I love hard. And I needed to make sure I was looking at everything eyes wide open and from my soul. I put the intention out, if a place comes available, it's meant to be. As I looked into California, that started to dwindle fast. I could feel it wasn't the right fit. And at the same time, I kept eyes and ears open for a place in that little beach town called Paradise. Places rarely come available, so I just turned it over to Source and had to focus my attention on living a life that would align me with what was meant for us. And right around that 1 year mark, I got COVID. Real bad. I explained it to people as one of the hardest and darkest times since Bob died. The toll it took on my body, both mentally and physically, was intense. And it makes sense. I was about to embark on a new adventure, and that old shit couldn't come with me. So during my 2 weeks in bed, working through my own stuff, processing just how I was feeling and mentally what was going on, and trying to get myself better, I got a notification that a brand new apartment had come available in that little beach town. Small, but great location and available. The boyfriend was excited, and that got me excited. It felt right. It felt like it was a little intimidating. And I did feel like I was taking a big risk. But the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. So with handling things behind the scenes, I slowly got my ducks in a row. And a little before Christmas, I broke the news to my parents. As you've been on this journey with me and you know the behind the scenes details, you could see how my family and closest friends were a little nervous for us. They have this expectation of what life should look like for us, and they have this trigger response to need to be close to us to protect us. I don't blame them. I also had to show them I needed to do this for Nash and our life is meant to look different. It's meant to look completely different than what anyone has ever seen before or expected for us. That means we're doing it right. I also needed them to trust me. I needed to trust me, and I needed them to follow suit. And I told them, if it crashes and burns, so be it. We have dealt with worse. Then, if that happens, that was meant to happen. But it felt too right. I told my parents in the town we were in, which was the bougie town I always wanted to live in, was a great spot for the transition, but it felt like it was holding us back. Like I was slowly dying in a very dramatic way. I felt like I was slowly dying and I wasn't happy. I didn't feel fulfilled with my days, and I felt like it was stunting my growth. And I told them it's my job for myself and for Nash to make sure we are happy. And at this point, happy meant following what my soul pull was telling me to do. And it was pulling me towards and practically lining up on a silver platter this new move. It was minimal effort to get the pieces to fall into place. My second experience at seeing life play out that way. I didn't have to force it. I didn't have to exhaust myself to make something happen. I just had to align myself, live my life in alignment with that soul, and allow things to be presented to me. And I just had to pick it up. So over New Year's, the move to the little beach town began. Little did I know what was in store for the next chapter, and just a short year later, what would lead us to our most recent life update. Thanks so much for being here. Please rate, like, share, and review so we can stay connected and continue this magical journey together.